This is Sportish.
Do it better.
This is Sportish. This is Sportish. This is Sportish. This is Sportish.
This is the first show of the second year of Sportish. Welcome to episode 53, everybody, here on FTF. I'm Geoff Brault. He's Dr. Keith Strudler, Director of the School of Communication and Media at Montclair State University. Our producer is Mike Wallace. Keith, I can think of no better way to start year two than with some big news. Earlier this week, nominations were released for the Audie Awards. Yes, indeed, the Audies are out, Keith, and this honors the nation's best in audio entertainment. And let's not forget, yes, you're enjoying Sportish on For the Fans, ftfnext.com, YouTube, whatever visual medium you like. Let's not forget that this show began as a podcast. That is the soul of Sportish.
Right.
And Keith, in a move that surprises no one, we didn't receive any nominations.
Did you read the back? Because there's probably a back page. Is there a back page? So I assume there was a sports podcast category.
Yeah, there was.
And we weren't on it.
Not even close.
All right. So I'm going to guess there was some of the and you know how this works. They go back to the same people time and time again. And the new emerging talent never gets its due. So I understand you probably saw a lot from The Ringer, probably a lot from major sports networks, maybe 30 for 30s. I understand. So that we got two options here. And one, I think we should think about one. Well, the one is an easy one. Next year, when this is coming to, you should remind me, because then I will actually submit. So I think part of the problem, and it's not an excuse, because the job of this organization is to find the best stuff. Right. I don't think it's just because we didn't submit or apply shouldn't keep us from winning the award. So that's on them. I think we both agree on that. But next year, maybe to make it a little bit easier, if you could at least forward me the application and let me know that due date, and ideally tell me the due date is actually 2 weeks before the actual due date, because I will miss the first due date. Just know that. Also, it'd be great if there's we're going to have to probably start a GoFundMe to raise some money for the entry fee. I find these things, there's a cost to enter, and I think it's to keep riffraff like us from applying. We will not let that stop us. The second thing, if we go through this rigmarole and we apply and we don't get nominated, I think you know where this is going. We're going to have to start our own award. The Sporties.
I thought we were going to bribe them. I thought it was going to be like, we're both going to go take out some money and we're going to put an envelope. But you thought we just give ourselves a trophy, which is probably more us. Let's be honest.
We're going to, I promise you, we're next year. And we were meant to do it this year. We just weren't ready yet. Next year, we are going to be applying for sports Emmys as well as whatever this award is, the Audies. All right. Yeah, we're going to apply for both of these. If we do not get a nomination, and I don't know if this is a threat or a promise or something in between, we will be starting our own awards program, and we will do it live on this show. All right. And I guarantee you Sportish will win at least one of those. I guarantee. How bad would it be if we didn't even win one of our own?
Just a clean sweep for Jay Friedman in the paid cave. Sportish guest of the year gets his revenge. I knew we should have opened this up to more than one voting member.
Andre, you voted for the pain cave? Really?
But I mean, it is a good show if you're into ultra running.
It's kind of the best ultra running show we know. So no, I'm disappointed to hear we didn't get far but that's okay. This is year one. No one makes it in year one other than NFL quarterbacks and NBA basketball players. I mean, everyone has to put in their sweat equity. Our time will come. And so honestly, warning shot to all the establishment that win. Warning shot to you, The Ringer, and to you, ESPN, and all of you. warning shot. Sportish is coming your way, and we're riding the For the Fans train, and it's coming. So we will win next year, or we will start our own thing.
And all of you out there, do your part too. Yeah, you're watching it on FTF, and that's great. You're checking it out on YouTube, which we appreciate. But don't forget to also download it wherever your favorite podcasts are heard. So Spotify, Apple, Google, Stitcher, we're on there as well. You have plenty of access to our opinions, and we need you to take advantage of every avenue so that we trick people into thinking that we're more important than we actually are. That's our only goal here. It's not to be important. It's for people to think we're important.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And remember, this is like matching dollars at any kind of donor kind of situation. If you listen to it 3 times, once on the podcast, once actually watching it live on the show, and then once on YouTube, that makes us think that there's 3 people that are engaging with this product. So do that, and then of course get the other people in your household to do the same.
Here's what we're going to talk about in this episode of Sportish. We're going to talk about heartbreak in real people sports, not heartbreak at the Masters or the NBA Finals. No. We're going to talk about heartbreak for weekend warriors. We're also going to talk about a move that some fans down in Florida pulled on Clemson, soon to be Jaguars quarterback Trevor Lawrence. And we're also going to touch on a big story from North Texas, Keith Strudler's stomping grounds, where a softball pitcher has done something that's never been done before. But first, Keith, a serious story from Minnesota. Last week on the show, we were talking about the Major League Baseball All-Star Game moving from Atlanta to Denver because of Major League Baseball reacting to the new voting restrictions that were passed in the state of Georgia. And we were both saying that, look, we think it's unsustainable if sports is constantly taking a stand on every bit of policy that is passed from a duly elected body. I think we have a different opinion when we saw in the past week sports taking a brief pause after the killing of Dante Wright in Minnesota by a police officer in that state. A number of sporting events did not go on the day after that news broke. And we think that this is an area where sports can make necessary societal change and is possibly the best vehicle we have to do so.
Yeah, I think more than anything, it has certainly been a challenging past week or two in Minnesota, and obviously as the trial goes on, and then we have another killing. I think at the very least it was an opportunity to take a pause. And I think in some cases, just as it was with COVID when sports stopped, just as it has been, during 9/11 when sports stopped, I think this was a moment for sports to almost signify where they are and kind of the greater pantheon of our lives, I suppose. And this is now an issue, and was an issue, obviously, before, as evidenced by the ongoing trial, that I think needed to be given, for lack of a better word, more space to be, I think, what Minnesota and Minneapolis and that area is discussing, and perhaps allowing everyone to recognize that this will perhaps take more of the oxygen than might have been taken up by, and I don't want to call them more trivial matters, but sporting events. And I think it's a recognition that sports can wait. And so I do think it's the right thing. And I think a lot of people in that area also wanted a moment for everything to calm down for a second. I think the idea of gathering large crowds together for a sporting event, it didn't make a lot of sense right now.
We learned during the pandemic that sports may be our society's number one marker of normality. Mm-hmm. And when sports go away, it marks the significance of a moment. And I think it's important that normality stops when something that society writ large demands be abnormal. When that occurs, I think it's important that we pause the great markers of normality in our society and reflect upon what has gone on out there. And I think we've learned over this past year that there's nothing better than sports to do that, to say, hey, this moment isn't okay for us as a society. We cannot go about business as usual right now because we have bigger problems, more systemic issues in our society than whether or not the Twins are playing a baseball game tonight.
Yeah, and obviously, and then look, that again also is not something that would be sustained over the long haul, and they'll play again, and they'll play again soon, possibly before this broadcast airs.
They already are.
Yes, I agree. I do think this is without going this is a difficult time in American history. And anyone who's not aware, between the pandemic and the ongoing conversation about racial justice, I mean, in my lifetime, certainly, and I'm older than you, but in my conscious lifetime, I don't remember a more intense and challenging moment, certainly in my history, because all the other moments that we've had that were challenging were, I don't want to say more isolated, but whether we're talking about 9/11 or some of the wars, that the Gulf War, they were, you could allow them to be remote, right? You could allow them to not impact you.
Sure,
you're living it. You're living both of these crises right now, and they're all consuming in some ways. So I think it's a good decision, certainly by the Twins, and I also think it will be a good decision when they start playing again.
Yeah, I like. And we're not here to rank the, severity of 9/11 versus this moment versus the Gulf War versus World War II. But like, you think about the times in which sports have paused, it's necessary. Like, it marks a moment. And, I think a lot of people are using sports for their own agenda when they're like, oh, look, we got to play the game, distraction. That's the wrong way to go about it, in my opinion. Like, there is great power and great import in not playing and saying we will not act the way we're going to act 364 other days of the year today, because this isn't a day to act normal. So, I mean, I think this is an area where, sports is going to help push the conversation forward, hopefully lead to some much needed societal change. And I am glad that in this instance, I know last week we were giving Major League Baseball, we're like, how sustainable is this when sports just tries to react to everything that goes on in the world and try to reflect either political left or the political right? This isn't a matter of left or right to me. This is a matter more of right or wrong.
Yeah, and this is also a local, in some cases, it became very much a local issue. And I think Minnesota is dealing with something very different than while these issues are prevalent nationwide, this is a particularly pronounced moment for Minnesota. I don't know that it would have been the right decision for every baseball team, but I think this is
they didn't, and nor should they have. But I think good on the Twins for putting out a statement. And by the way, the statement was essentially what we're talking about. We're pausing because we find this unacceptable. It was not like, oh, we're concerned about a curfew or safety issues. Yeah. They didn't mention, they could have taken the easy way out and done it that way, but they didn't. They were like, look, I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are. I'm sure all of these things go into play as they're making this decision. And I'm sure they're, it's a volatile moment. And so, but I agree. I think it was the right decision. I think it will be the right decision when they play again. And I think in the end of the day, the tenor of this moment will continue until we have kind of navigated our way through COVID at the very least, because I think the intensity of these moments, as we are all still, I know we're not all quarantined at this point, we're not all locked, but we're not living a normal life. And unless, apparently though, I had a friend who knew someone that was visiting someplace in South Carolina and said it is a little bit of a different world for us South Carolinians. Yeah. Well, I mean,
it's a little different than it is up here in New Jersey.
I was in Texas not too long ago for the NCAA tournament, and it was different. I mean, it was when I landed, it was a Saturday night, and I went to get some food, and there were a lot of people out there. Now, more of them, not all of them, but more of them were wearing masks than I thought would be, because there's no more mask mandate in Texas. But the amount of people that were awfully comfortable going into a bar, more than I would have predicted.
So, and again, I'm not going to use this moment to judge. And at some point, look, this thing has gotten us all crazy anyway. So part of me, when I heard like what was happening at a particular university in South Carolina, I was like, that sounds kind of nice. Like, I think I could go for that right about now. And again, we've talked about this and then we'll move on. We've talked about this. The pandemic will end when we decide it's going to end. It's going to have to end. I mean, I just not as egregious as people who have thrown caution to the wind all along and be like, masks, who wears a mask? There is not an equal risk, but certainly a pronounced risk of people that are unable to move forward in a risk reward kind of scenario. And I think I wrote this in one of my brilliant commentaries that aired on WAMC in the last couple of weeks, but it was at some point, this virus and this crisis will move from really a medical and an epidemiological one to a psychological crisis, because we're going to have to decide, like, once you and I get our separate second shots here, although we should have shared shots. We should.
No, Keith, we have to be responsible. We're trying to win an Audi. We have to be responsible. We can't be telling people to share needles. We're not here. We have to be responsible. Everybody should get their own vaccine. I repeat, do not share your vaccine with your television co-host. We do not endorse that. The views of Keith Strudler do not reflect the views of Sportish or the For the Fans Network.
How did we not think of doing a TV hit for this and getting it together and having us sitting on the table next to each other and we each get a shot at the same time? How did we not think about doing that?
Do you want to know the real reason?
Because I cry when I get my shot. Why?
Because I'm more essential than you and had my appointment long before you did.
We're not. It's not going to happen. We're not going to do this here. We're not going to do this here. We're not going to do this here. You know who's going to adjudicate this issue? Our maker. Our maker is going to be the one. We're not going to get into this now, but I'm just saying we missed an opportunity. Look at all these famous people that got their shots, right? That got their shots on television. I didn't see any of them do it as a duo to be like, here you go. Like one nurse just goes, Shazam. Like we're sitting next to him. One nurse just jabs us at the same time. That's a great shot.
Even more insulting, 2020 Sportish Guest of the Year, Jay Friedman's second shout out of the episode is a medical doctor.
That, my feelings about Jay Friedman. I think he's selfish, narcissistic, and he had access to this medical treatment very early, and he taunted us. He made it I don't know what the CDC says. Our government says there's very little that's more essential than Sportish. And by the way, in about a week or so, you and I are going to have a pretty significant announcement that might, and just, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but for those of you that are fans of sports other than football, basketball, and baseball, we might have something special coming for you. We might have something really special, but that might precipitate a road show or two, right? It might precipitate a road show or two, and we're going to be out in the open on the road. And darn it, if we weren't vaccinated, we'd be putting ourselves and all of our fans at risk. So shame on you, Jay Freeman. Shame on you, 2020 Guest of the Year, Jay Freeman. What about your Hippocratic oath? What about your Hippocratic oath?
Let's not talk about Jay Freeman anymore. Let's talk about a real hero, right? NCAA North Texas softball player Hope Troutween. Hope Troutween pitched a perfect game, 7 innings softball, striking out every batter she faced. 21 up, 21 down, every batter struck out. The fielders were just window dressing. They didn't need to come out of the dugout. It's believed to be the first ever perfect game with 21 strikeouts in NCAA history. They don't even have a name for it. We don't know what this is called. So people are like, it's a perfect game with 21 strikeouts. No. It is one of the most impressive accomplishments in sports history.
That's never been a now. Who were they playing?
I don't recall. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who they were playing.
It does matter if they were playing like the third grade team from the elementary school down the street. Really?
It's still really impressive. Yes. Think about how many times UCLA or Oklahoma or Oregon has played some terrible team. None of them have ever done this.
Well, no, your answer to that question is like, look at the size of the strike zone of a third grader. It's going to be very hard for someone to, but then again, a third grader, their impulse, the brain is not fully developed. They'll swing on anything. I mean, you want to see a kid swing, they'll swing. By the way, that's why I need the robotic camera. I could have captured that whole thing.
I think we just learned why Keith ran track.
I am a terrible. I'm okay in the field. I am horrible at the plate. When the ball starts to move in my direction, slow pitch, fast twitch, it's like my arms become unable to work in conjunction with one another. So they're each doing something separate. Like Mr. Baseball, there's a hole in your swing. Mm-hmm. This is the hole in my swing. The entire strike zone is the hole in my swing. By the way, I watched that film the other day. Still not that good. It was on.
Man, was like your remote run out of batteries or
Mr. Base? There are movies. I don't say no to Tom Selleck. Period. When now three men and a baby. That's where I draw the line. But almost universally, Magnum is still, I still think the greatest television show ever made. And the new Magnum, by the way, it's holding its own weight. Just a little sidebar. I just realized that the star of Magnum was also the running back in the film Friday Night Lights. And I don't know how I didn't connect these dots because I love both of them. I don't know what divide in my brain was keeping me from
Friday Night Lights, the movie or the TV show?
The movie.
Booby Miles?
No. Not the defensive player, not running back, the defensive back. I think
Chavez.
Yes.
Oh,
Chavez.
Okay.
Chavez.
I've never watched Magnum. I've never watched Magnum PI, the old one or the new one.
You've never watched either?
Never.
I'm not sure we can continue this show.
Never done it. I'm not big on. And I was actually talking to someone about this the other day.
You don't know who TC is and Rick?
No,
Higgins?
You made those up as far as I'm concerned. During the pandemic, I don't know if I've watched anything on like broadcast cable outside of For the Fans or live sports in the last 13 months.
You've never watched, so you don't watch any of the NBC, CBS. You don't watch like This Is Us.
None of it.
I don't either.
None of it. Every once in a while, as we've discussed, but it's out of season right now, I will go into the on-demand and watch my guilty pleasure, Below Deck Mediterranean. But outside of Below Deck Med, I don't do a lot of broadcast.
Yeah. Well, you know how I feel about My Lottery Dream House. By the way, there's a British version of that show as well. And you know what? And every British house is ugly. Well,
there's a country.
What is it?
There's a country we won't be broadcast in.
No one's allowed into Britain anymore. Now that they left the EU, I don't think you're allowed in. But they what is it? Why does everything have to be so old? Why are they like, this is a beautiful house? It's relatively new, built in the 1400s. I just don't understand why they can't bulldoze things.
Are you seriously asking me why things in Europe are old? Is that?
You've never been to Europe. Now? You can't give a cogent answer to that. So,
right. How could I possibly figure out why things are old in Europe?
You might figure it out. I'm going to tell you, you're going to visit there and then you're going to be like, well, my hotel wasn't so great. You'll be longing for a Holiday Inn Express. Trust me on that. So
I can't visit because they make you dip your French fries your chips in mayonnaise. I can't do that.
By the way, over there, they call them freedom fries. All right. So you don't have to dip them in mayonnaise. I don't like mayonnaise. You know that. So, all right. So let's talk about this. We kind of got sidetracked on the absolute perfect game.
Yes.
Give me a comparison. I know you watched a fair amount of softball. Give me a comparison of a perfect game in softball versus baseball in terms of difficulty. I know it's lower scoring typically in softball.
There's 7 innings in softball. There's 9 in baseball. So you got to get 6 more outs in a baseball game. Perfect games are less rare in softball.
Okay.
They happen more often. But 21 up, 21 down, striking out. That's outrageous. It's insane.
And also in general, pitchers, at least from what I understand, pitchers can be particularly dominant in softball. Yes. And there's also less wear and tear. You can roll a little bit more because it's a more natural throwing motion.
Oh, you can pitch, you can pitch 50 innings in a row if you want.
Yeah.
But it's exceptionally rare that somebody doesn't put the ball in play. The one thing you will say about softball, comparing it to baseball, and buckle up for some high-level sports analysis, the ball is bigger. So theoretically, it's easier to make contact with.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So she threw a perfect game. That's great. So there's supposed to be something. Am I supposed to? Are you now relying on me for the analysis?
You're supposed to be impressed. You're supposed to go, that's amazing. And then we were going to make
amazing.
jokes about, before you went on some odd tangent about Tom Selleck, we were going to make jokes about, like, where do you go from here? How do you come out the next day? Like, what's left to do? There's nothing left to do. She should be done.
Retire? Do you leave your shoes? Are you like a wrestler at that point? Do you take your cleats off and leave them at the mound?
I mean, I feel like you have to, right? Like, there's nothing but downside from here.
You gotta at that point figure out there's got to be you got to drop out of college athletics and start to make some money, because at that point you should be sponsoring products. You're perfect, right? There's got to be products that you're perfect. So it is impressive. But isn't that the way everything is in sports at some point? When you have that absolute perfect, your best experience.
Yeah, but
don't you live your entire life trying to?
But most sports, you can't. This literally cannot be beaten. Like, you cannot strike out a 20-second batter in a perfect game. Like, this is it. Like, you cannot top this.
Rule change. I think this is going to be our thing. If you get through 21, you should be allowed to line them up and keep setting a record. You should be able to keep calling them until someone hits you. It's a good idea, isn't it?
It is. That's actually a great idea. That's a great idea. I would watch the heck out of that.
How demoralizing is that? Is you're like, look, the game is officially over. You've lost 7-0, but you're going to keep hitting. You're going to keep.
The only thing more demoralizing than losing a game, striking out every out, is losing a game, striking out every out, but that game ends because the pitcher was like, that's enough. I'm not doing this anymore. That is the only thing that could top losing a game with 21 consecutive strikeouts.
Well, it's almost kind of getting us back to our favorite sports movie. Is it 7 Days in Hell?
That's a good one.
where they just couldn't end, of course, spoiler alert, they kill each other at the end. Spoiler alert.
I mean, look, Keith, you once won a major sporting event at Cornell University when your top competitor said, I capitulate.
No, that actually, I have to have a small correction. I won a major sporting event at Cornell. I won the Dining Hall Classic, which I outran and outate everyone. Right. Mm-hmm. The eating contest you're referring to, I actually won at the University of Florida when there was a stuffed pizza eating contest. And it was, I was seating a good 50 pounds to my competitor, but what I gave up in weight, I had in spades and moxie. And I think that's literally what took me over. And so that event ended with my opponent sitting on a toilet seat with his manager rubbing his ankles while he was on the phone with his girlfriend, asking her what he should do. And after that heartful conversation, while he was getting a soft, sweet rub from his manager, who he yelled from inside the toilet stall, I capitulate. So, it's a true story. It's a true story.
You know more than anyone how sweet it is to win when the opposition taps out.
It's a true story. That felt good. It felt good. Although I felt good and bad at the same time, because if you've eaten a lot of stuffed crust pizza, it's challenging.
Now, you might think that there is no more heartbreaking way to lose a competition than capitulating to Keith Strudler while receiving an ankle rub from a gentleman while seated on a toilet. However, you may be wrong. There's a viral video that was circulating on the internet this week. And this is not the first time this has happened. This has probably happened hundreds and thousands of times, but we could see real heartbreak when just a regular bowler, recreational bowler, was bidding for a 300 game. They got to their 12th roll, the third ball of the 10th frame.
So they've gotten the two free rolls. They hit one, they got their 2 free rolls, or they get the second free roll, and then they hit another strike, and now this is it. They need to knock down 10 pins to bowl a 300 game. You talk about 21 strikeouts, a perfect game. You can do no better than 300. And what happened? The 6 pin hung. They got a 9. They finished with a 2
299.
The
And
six
I don't
pin.
know
Now,
if I can.
Which one is
think
the
of a-
6-pin?
I don't know if I can think of a moment more heartbreaking than losing a 300 game with a 9 on your 12th roll.
Mm-hmm. So do you know which one the 6-pin is?
One of the 10 that isn't the 7 or the 10. I know which two those are. I know which one the 1 is, and then the 2 and the 3, and the 6 is one of the ones in the middle.
So it's a middle. It's a mid-range. It's often it's not a glory pin, right? It's not a glory pin, but it made itself known on that day. It absolutely asserted its dominance on that particular day. And was this part of a league? What was happening here?
We have no context. All we know is that there's a guy bowling, and then he rolls. He gets 9 pins down, and then the camera pans up to the board, and it says final score 299.
Okay, so it's an electron. Is this part of a birthday party? Is this?
Yes, it's an electronic. It didn't happen in 1984.
You know what I love? When they have the old ones, and then they have like the little graphics to be like the person comes in and like bowling pins dancing.
Yeah, sure.
So, all right. So this person, but you don't know if this was a semi-professional bowler. You don't know if it's a league bowler. You don't know if it's an 8-year-old.
Based on the lane, it looked like a guy who just went out to the alley with his friends. Now, obviously, if you can bowl 11 strikes in a row, you're pretty good at bowling. But he certainly is not dressed like a professional bowler, and this is not at a professional bowling event.
We don't know. So we don't know if this person's bowled a 300 before, do we?
We do not.
Because that's obviously
that doesn't matter. That doesn't make
it does matter. It does matter.
It does. I don't know if it does.
It does matter. If this is your one and only chance, what if
is he
what if
bowling?
it's like in Caddyshack when the priest goes out there and he's like, I can't believe it, and then he gets hit by lightning at the end.
The good Lord would never spoil the best round of my life. But if it mattered, then why is he still bowling? Once you bowl a 300 game, then by that logic, you should never bowl again.
Well, that's what you said. According to the pitcher, anyone who does something great should just retire. Should just stop.
Where do you go from there? But this person is chasing perfection again.
Why are we still doing shows? We've done a perfect show, and yet here we are. Here we are.
I think 2020 Sportish Guest of the Year Jay Friedman would disagree with you.
So, all right. So I look. This has got. Did this person? Did you see the angst on the person?
Please stop asking me about this person. I
Did
know
you do
nothing about this person. This person rolled a bowling ball. I don't know in what country they rolled it in. I don't know how heavy the bowling ball was. They appeared to be wearing some sort of dark colored t-shirt. They knocked down 9 pins. And according to the electronic scoreboard, that was the fewest they had knocked down in their previous 11 rolls. So that's the extent of what I know about the person who bowled the one frame that was seen on Instagram.
I'll tell you what's really holding Sportish back from the award season. It's the research department. I think that might be the weak link, because neither of us, we've now asked multiple questions about, I asked you who North Texas was playing. You have no idea. No age bracket, nothing. All right. I asked you who this bowler was. No idea. So really, you're presenting tidbits of information, and I'm supposed to give you some insight based off that. So
first of all, I will not let you disparage our producer Mike Wallace on this program by saying he does not do a good job. How dare you? How dare you say that our production team is not doing their job? You're over here asking for unnecessary context. It doesn't matter who North Texas played. It doesn't matter how good this person was at bowling. It makes no difference. None.
You have a better chance at getting a hand-delivered note from the Pope than you have of Mike Wallace looking up any piece of information for this show. All right. So that said, so I will roll with this. All right. So look, I had a teammate who had somewhat of a similar, and I think I mentioned this because there are these lines, these markers that are really important to cross. Obviously in bowling, it's 300 because that's what you can get. In track, on the men's side, 4-minute mile is a big number. That's a big one. It's a big one. And so I had a teammate who was really a guy named Bill Rathburn. If you're watching, hey Bill. He was an excellent miler. Won Heps a couple times, or a few times. A really great miler. Was pushing on the edge of the 4-minute mile, right? And it was senior season, and he hadn't quite gotten there. And I can't remember the context, but he basically ended up doing kind of one of these almost semi postseason track meets, kind of right on the tail end of the season, to kind of really to go after a time. And the idea was he was going to go pop. I mean, he had the talent, certainly had the ability to run a 4-minute mile. He just hadn't been in the right meet to make it happen. Because really, sometimes that's contextual. You got to be in the right meet where people are kind of pulling you along. And for whatever reason, he forgot, and I believe this story is true because it was told to me by multiple people, forgot his track spikes and ended up having to wear a spare pair that were older. And we had some crappy old spikes and they fit fine, but they weren't kind of modern new technology or whatever it was at that point, a little bit heavier. Ended up running 4 minutes flat, 0.05, 0.05 of a second, missed the 4-minute mile. And he's wearing old crappy spikes because he forgot the right spikes. I do believe he like literally extended his running career for a year so he could break the form. Like, I think that was haunting him to the point that he's like, I will literally train post-grad for a year so I can break a 4-minute mile because it was that painful. Did he do it? That seems like, do it? Oh yeah, he did. He did break a 4-minute mile.
No, that's a happy ending to the story.
And he's probably like four bills right now. Probably stopped running for the rest of his life after that. Probably could barely move out of his chair.
Well, as we discussed, once you achieve perfection, what else is there to do? He should be. He has earned the right to not run.
So that's one. I mean, there's some obvious other ones. The ones that you could think of are it's the perfect game or things like that. You know, coming up 1 second short.
And I mean, you know, obviously we're talking about real person sports moments, not professional, but the most heartbreaking thing that I think has happened in professional sports is Andres Galarraga. I'm sorry, not Andres Galarraga, Armando Galarraga, pitcher for both of those players are Major League Baseball players. I know. Armando Galarraga was about to pitch a perfect game in the major leagues, did it, and the umpire blew the call. There was a bang play at first, and the umpire said safe. Not right. Yeah. And so he lost his perfect game and his no-hitter.
I'll give you another one that's not from sports, but I think this one hurts a lot. Okay. So I was watching a documentary on Discovery. Well, I think it was last night. And by the way, I've started watching the WeWork documentary.
Oh, I watched it on Hulu. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not bad. Yeah. It's not bad.
I enjoyed it. I like how you say you've started watching it, so you can't just digest all 1 hour and 40 minutes in one sitting. You really wanted to chop that sucker up, right? How do you eat an elephant? 1 bite at a time.
It's a lot to take in. And I knew that, you know, there was New House Hunters International starting up. So I started watching that, but that's not what I'm talking about. So I was watching Discover, and there was a kind of a short mini doc on how Pluto stopped being a planet.
Indeed.
And it was explained to me, it's a dwarf planet. Right? It's a dwarf planet, right? But apparently there might be several dwarf planets, and this is like out in the our solar system's equivalent of the outer rim. Like you got the close planets, which are we're in, and then you got your, as you like to call, the gaseous planets, right? Which is
it's not what I don't like to call them, the gaseous planets. I and all of the world's astrophysicists like to call them the gaseous planets. But I do thank you for giving me credit for that. Like, I'm the one who one day looked up with a telescope and was like, that seems solid. And they're like, well, what would you call that, Jeff? And I go, I think I'd call it a gaseous planet. And everybody's like, yeah, we're on board with that.
It's definitely not rock. You can fly right through that thing. But so, and then you move into the outer rim, and Pluto was found it. You know, they discovered it in the 1930s, right? And they're like, this thing it's a giant rock. It goes in a circle. It's the only one we see out there. We don't see other meteoric, you know, kind of garbage out there, right? And so that's going to be our was it our 9th planet? It's going to be Pluto, and then in like 2000, was it 4 or 6, right around that time, there was all this hubbub because now they're like, I guess they have a bigger telescope. They went to Best Buy, got a bigger telescope, and they're seeing like, hold on, folks, there's a lot of big rocks out in the outer rim, and they might go in a circle too. Now, not for nothing, Jupiter has like 5 moons, so let's not say it's insignificant. It's got 5. There's at least 5 followers, so at least 5 people think that Jupiter is worth literally spinning around all the time, right? Mm-hmm. And so there was this like convention.
Don't mind me. I'm just going to be over here Googling how many moons Jupiter has because I can't let that go without a fact check.
I'm almost sure I'm right on this one. And so tell me I'm right. So not Jupiter. I meant Pluto.
You want to know how many moons? You couldn't have. You're comically wrong. Do you know how many moons Jupiter has?
Well, I meant Pluto. Pluto.
You want to know how many moons Jupiter has?
I don't know. How many? 5.
79.
All right. How many? I meant Pluto. And
but now,
to
be fair, look, perhaps, we can agree to disagree. My source, however, is NASA.
Fake news. How many does Pluto have? That's what I meant. Pluto.
Let's look.
That's a lot, though. I'll tell you what. I would have missed the over/under on the Jupiter one. No way I'm going over, no way I'm going over 15 for Jupiter. I don't care how big.
Pluto has 5 moons.
That's what I meant. All right.
Can you name them?
1, 2, 3. No, you don't name moons.
Yeah.
The moon is just a moon.
Our moon is the moon.
So their moon one. That's just the name.
Charon, Nix, Hydra, Styx, and my favorite, Kerberos. Those are the moons of Pluto. So Jupiter, 79 moons. Pluto, 5 moons. Earth, 1 moon.
That sounds like what Hollywood celebrities name their kids. I mean, that's ridiculous. And so, so at any rate, Apple wasn't taken. I mean, what? Apologies to all the apples in the audience. So by the way, all right. So Pluto. Then they get to this big convention, and there's all this like, is it a planet? Should we divide what? And next thing you know, as the convention is kind of like a lot of people have already left, there's a vote, and it's a hand vote. It's a public vote. And next thing you know, you've only got like half the scientists even left there. And Pluto is now no longer a planet, just like that. And I don't think it was. So here's what I'm going to answer the question. I don't think there's anything more disappointing in the world than being a planet and then not being a planet. I cannot imagine a bigger fall. So I understand. Yes, this guy was 1 pin away and he thought he was there. He was touching greatness. And I think that pain is nothing compared to what Pluto feels, as it is part of, like, it's literally in the same. This is like making the Premier League. I don't care that you're a small town in Britain. You're in the Premier League. Pluto is standing next to Jupiter, Saturn in all its glory, right? It's now in a conversation. It's now in a conversation.
We're just waiting for you to say the funny one.
I don't need to.
It's the one that Pluto's actually next to.
Uranus. but also it's got a planet with all sorts of people on it, and Earth. Like, it's in a real league now. And next thing you know.
Thank you for specifying which planet in the solar system has the people.
You don't know. Have you ever been to Mercury? Have you been to Mercury? We got a rover up on Mars right now that might have a very different opinion. There's probably a reason why they can't get that thing up, because the Martians are keeping it down. All right. So please, there's
a planet with people. That one's Earth.
So I think
So your answer to what is the most heartbreaking real person sports moment is Pluto being demoted from planet to dwarf planet. Okay. Mine was going to be missing a putt in golf to break whatever number you're trying to break, because golf tends to work in 10. So you try to break 100, you try to break 90, you try to break 80, you try to break 70. And inevitably, because golf is very difficult, you have to fail at doing that a number of times before you actually get the chance to do it. And when you come close, oftentimes you have one putt left. You're like, all right, there's a difference between a 79 or an 80. And if you miss that putt for 79, it feels pretty bad. And it's a feeling that almost every golfer's had at some point.
Yeah, but I don't think that matters, because it's dependent on the course. Not every 79 on one course is different than 79 on another course.
Absolutely right. But it's still really hard to do. Whatever number you're chasing, it's very difficult to do. Plus, golf, possibly more than any other sport, it's all up here. So when you get close to those numbers, it gets much, much harder.
I mean, I agree. I think that the variability in courses changes that. I think it's more applicable to a sport like track or swimming, where there's a number. Like, for a lot of distance runners, breaking 15 in the 5,000 is a big number to get under. There are these standard kind of numbers depending on where you are. Yeah. And then swimming, that's, and it's more, but here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to give you a better example. I think, and I don't know what the number is on hot dogs, but I bet you there's no worse feeling if you're Kobayashi or Joey Chestnut.
Joey Chestnut, yeah.
And you're let's say it's 81 and you've got the 80th and you have a reversal of fortune.
That would be tough. Especially if you're not a Joey Chestnut or Kobayashi. Maybe you're an Eric Badlands Booker. You're a Tim Eater X Janet.
There's no way Eric Badlands Booker gets touched in the
Black
80s.
Widow Thomas.
No...
Like maybe you're one of them and you're having a wonderful gastrointestinal day. And then it comes back to get you. You bite off more than you can chew at the worst possible time.
I'm going to tell you, there's probably not a sport with a greater obvious divide between the true greats and literally the next level. Because you mentioned an Eric Badlands Booker, he's not even in the same conversation. I mean, if he's in the 60s, it's there's such a wide delta between the luminaries in that sport and those that might finish third. Right? I actually don't. I think you'd have a hard time finding a sport with a wider divide, and I don't know why you. Not that if we're going to get into it, I don't know why you can't close that gap.
Nor do I. We do have one more thing to touch on before
I thought this was our last story. Okay.
Jacksonville Jaguars fans who are soon to be fans of Trevor Lawrence, who's going to be the number 1 pick in the upcoming draft, found his wedding registry. And as a welcome gift to Jacksonville, took up a collection to buy him a $300 toaster and a Dyson vacuum. By the way, they raised over $7,000 to buy gifts for Trevor Lawrence. So they bought him the toaster, a vacuum, and then they're donating the rest to his favorite charity. So that's nice. But here's what gets me: a $300 toaster.
Oh, stop it. Stop it. This is why you'll never get married, because
this isn't why.
No. Well, this is one of the, because as you were getting ready to get married, you would somehow this poor woman who has somehow missed all of the other signs, like get out, right? You're going to be literally at the point being like, well, let's just do the registry. And she's gonna be like, well, I like that toaster. You're gonna be like, well, hold on. That's a $300 toaster.
Yes.
And she's going to be like, I know, but it's a great toaster. It really, and you're like, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to put a hard line on this one. We can't.
And I would. It's not going to make the bread better heated.
It actually would. It actually would. And so, as someone who has a mixer here that probably costs more than most automobiles, you just do it. So that's A. B. What is Trevor Lawrence doing with the registry? He can't buy his own toaster.
He doesn't have that money yet. That check hasn't cleared.
That's the insane part. Let me tell you what, I know we're running out of time. I have a pet peeve of really rich people asking for gifts. I have a huge pet peeve with that. If you are rich enough, you do not have a registry. That's where he should have drawn the line.
And this is why I'm not getting you a gift for your birthday. It's all the time we've got for this episode of Sportish. For our producer, Mike Wallace, and Dr. Keith Strudler, the director of the School of Communication and Media at Montclair State University. I'm Geoff Brault. Thanks for hanging out with us here on For the Fans. Don't forget to check us out on YouTube. We need you on YouTube. We need you at ftfnext.com for archives, and listen to our audio on Google, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, all those fun places. We're back at you next week, Thursday, 3 p.m. right here on FTF. See you.
Thanks for listening to Sportish. See you next time.